$75,000,000 fans across the globe are watching the 2026 World Cup unfold, soaking in every VR controversy, every questionable refereeing decision, and every corporate FIFA directive. They are fed a sanitized narrative. But behind the official brand of football lies a history of psychological warfare. Let's talk about the ultimate mental cage. Let's talk about the goalkeeper who didn't just stop shots, he broke the minds of the greatest attackers to ever lace up a boot. Pat Jennings didn't dive around like a circus performer. He didn't scream at his defenders or punch the air for the cameras. He just stood there. And that quiet presence was enough to drive football royalty completely out of their minds. Let's rewind. For 2 decades, British and Irish football was flooded with raw, unfiltered genius. George Best could turn a defender inside out in a phone booth. Glenn Hoddle could wait a pass through the eye of a needle. Kevin Keegan ran until his lungs burned. Kenny Dalglish manipulated space with the cunning of a grandmaster. They were icons. Gods of the turf. And then they faced Pat Jennings. Pat Jennings was a special talent. His career spanned an astonishing 22 years at the absolute summit of the game, taking in over 1,000 top-level appearances, glittering spells at both Tottenham Hotspur and Arsenal, and 119 international caps for Northern Ireland. While other keepers relied on acrobatic desperation, Jennings relied on an unshakable, terrifying geometry. He mastered the art of standing his ground, narrowing the angles, and making the goal look impossibly small. Strikers didn't just fail to score against him, they began second-guessing their own technical execution. Let's break down the elite scorers who tested him, and how the quiet Irishman dismantled them one by one. George Best knew him better than almost anyone. They shared Northern Ireland jerseys, hotel rooms, and countless training ground battles. You would think training against your own goalkeeper gives you the upper hand. You would think friendship breeds familiarity. It did the exact opposite. Best walked onto the pitch with supreme, untouchable confidence. He had the world at his feet. The media loved him, defenders feared him, and goalkeepers usually just guessed and prayed. But Jennings didn't guess. Jennings watched. Best would try his trademark body feints, the shoulder drops that left world-class international fullbacks sliding past empty space. He would shift the ball to his right, look for the bottom corner, and fire. And Jennings would just be there. Not sprawling frantically. Just standing tall, hands out, catching the ball like a routine clearance. Let me be fair for a second. George Best still scored his share of goals against everybody. But whenever he faced Jennings in domestic clashes between Manchester United and Tottenham, or in high-stakes international camps, the aura shifted. Best wasn't playing against a man anymore. He was playing against a mirror that refused to blink. Teammates reported that Best would shake his head in disbelief, muttering under his breath as Jennings tossed the ball out to start a counterattack. The magic didn't vanish, it hit a brick wall. Then came Glenn Hoddle. If Best was pure instinctive flair, Hoddle was pure geometry. He saw angles nobody else could perceive. When Hoddle stood over a dead ball or orchestrated an attack from deep midfield, he wasn't just playing football, he was playing chess 3 moves ahead. Hoddle believed he could outsmart any keeper in the world simply by exploiting the blind spots in human reaction time. He would strike a free kick with that vicious, dipping spin that made the ball dance in the air just inches before crossing the line. Except Jennings didn't fall for the dance. Hoddle would curl a 30-yard masterpiece toward the top corner, watching the flight path with absolute certainty that it was nestling in the side netting. And out of nowhere, a massive, safe pair of catcher's hands would pluck it out of the air. No theatrics. Just quiet, devastating efficiency. Hoddle later confessed that playing against Jennings felt like trying to solve a puzzle written in a language that didn't exist. You could study the shape, you could calculate the trajectory, but the answer was always the same, absolute denial. Best and Hoddle tried everything. Flair, vision, trickery, audacity. None of it mattered. You want work rate? You want relentless, unyielding pressure. Enter Kevin Keegan and Brian Robson. If George Best and Glenn Hoddle represented the artistic side of football, Keegan and Robson were the Industrial Revolution. They didn't just want to beat you, they wanted to suffocate you. They ran until their legs gave out, chased lost causes, and treated every minute of a match like a personal crusade. Kevin Keegan. Kevin Keegan was a force of nature. At Liverpool and Hamburg, he terrorized defenses with his explosive bursts of acceleration and non-stop movement. He was the kind of striker who fed on chaos. He thrived when defenders panicked, when clearances were rushed, and when structure broke down. When Keegan charged into the box, defenders backed away. Pat Jennings didn't back away. Jennings possessed a terrifying superpower, absolute calm in the eye of a storm. While everyone else was caught in the frantic, breathless scramble of a penalty box melee, Jennings operated in slow motion. Keegan would latch onto a loose ball, spin sharply, and unleash a point-blank snapshot aimed at the roof of the net. In that split second, Keegan expected the keeper to flinch, to drop his weight, to commit early. Jennings never committed early. He read the striker's hips, not his boots. By the time Keegan struck the ball, Jennings had already filled the exact centimeter of space the shot required. Match after match, club after club, Keegan found himself staring down a giant who refused to panic. It drove him nuts. You can't intimidate a man who doesn't feel pressure. You can't catch a keeper off guard when his positioning is so fundamentally sound that he's already standing where the ball is going before you even decide to kick it. And right alongside Keegan was Brian Robson. Captain Marvel. Robson didn't just enter the penalty box, he attacked it like a paratrooper behind enemy lines. His trademark was the late, thunderous header arriving from deep midfield, meeting crosses with terrifying velocity. Robson believed in sheer force of will. If technique didn't work, determination would. Picture the scene, Manchester United vs Tottenham. The ball is whipped wide. Robson detects a fractional gap between the central defenders. He launches his entire body forward, eyes locked on the cross, neck muscles tensed for a bullet header into the bottom corner. It was a goal against 99 out of 100 goalkeepers in professional football. Except the 100th was Pat Jennings. Jennings didn't dive away from Robson's oncoming momentum, he met it with immovable authority. He didn't just block the header, he swallowed it. Robson would hit the turf, sliding past the goalpost, expecting to hear the roar of the Stretford end celebrating another trademark header. Instead, he'd look up to see Jennings casually rolling the ball out to his fullback, completely unfazed by the potential concussion he just avoided by mere inches. To a player like Robson, who measured his worth in blood, sweat, and total commitment, running into a wall like Jennings wasn't just frustrating, it was soul-crushing. You gave everything you had, executed the movement to absolute perfection, and the reward was a large Irishman catching the ball and glaring at you with complete indifference. The engine met the anchor. And the anchor won. Every single time. Let's step into the realm of pure tactical cunning. If you think raw pace and relentless running were enough to crack Pat Jennings, you clearly haven't met Kenny Dalglish. Kenny Dalglish. King Kenny was operating on a completely different frequency. He didn't need to burn past you with speed, he used his low center of gravity, his impregnable shield play, and a brain that processed football faster than an advanced supercomputer. Dalglish was a master of deception. He knew how to drag a defender out of position, create a microfraction of space, and slide the ball past a goalkeeper before they even realized the shot had left his boot. Dalglish studied opponents. He looked for habits, predictable weight shifts, and mental fatigue. He tried studying Jennings. It was a complete waste of time. When Liverpool faced Tottenham or Arsenal, Dalglish would orchestrate intricate passing sequences, trying to manipulate Jennings's sightline through a forest of bodies. He would wait for the exact moment a defender's head blocked the keeper's view, then snap a low, fizzing shot right through the traffic. Any normal goalkeeper would be screened. Any normal goalkeeper would react half a second too late. Jennings wasn't normal. His peripheral vision and positional geometry were so advanced that he didn't need to see the initial strike, he tracked the body language of the shooter and adjusted his frame instinctively. Dalglish would execute his trademark turn, strike the ball cleanly, watch it arrow toward the bottom corner, and watch Jennings extend a massive, glove-clad hand to palm it wide. No celebration. No screaming at his defenders. Just a quiet nod, resetting his feet for the ensuing corner kick. Dalglish later admitted that playing against Jennings felt like playing against a ghost. You could see him, you could pass around him, but the moment you tried to finish, he occupied the exact physical space you desperately needed. And then there was Frank Stapleton. If Dalglish was the elusive tactical mastermind, Stapleton was the ultimate North London Derby executioner. A towering, powerful Irish international centre-forward who lived for physical combat inside the 18-yard box. Stapleton knew Jennings better than almost anyone else on this list because they shared a national team dressing room. Stapleton knew Jennings's weaknesses, his habits, his preferences. He saw him in training every single week during international breaks. Knowledge, however, is useless when execution is flawless. When Stapleton crossed the divide, playing for Arsenal while Jennings stood between the sticks for arch-rivals Tottenham, the stakes skyrocketed. The North London Derby is already a cauldron of hatred and pressure. Add two towering Irish legends locking horns at opposite ends of the pitch, and it turns into a war of attrition. Stapleton would rise above defenders, hammering headers downward with vicious intent. He would chest balls down in the box, pivot, and unleash ferocious volleys. Jennings would catch them. Not parry them into dangerous areas. Not scramble to collect the rebound. He caught thunderbolts as if they were gentle practice tosses from a toddler. Stapleton tried power. He tried placement. He tried deception. Nothing worked. The training ground secrets didn't translate into matchday goals because Jennings didn't rely on tricks, he relied on an unshakable, fundamental mastery of his craft that could not be decoded, even by someone who shared a pint with him on international duty. Finally, we arrive at the ultimate predator of the penalty box, Gary Lineker. If every other attacker on this list relied on flair, power, work rate, or tactical wizardry, Lineker relied on pure, surgical spatial intelligence. He was the ultimate goal poacher. Lineker didn't care about dribbling past three men or hitting 35-yard screamers. He cared about being in the exact right place at the exact right millisecond. By the time Lineker was hitting his peak, Jennings was moving into the veteran twilight of his legendary career. You would think age would be the equalizer. You would think slowing reflexes would finally grant an elite striker the upper hand. You would be wrong. Lineker squared off against Jennings during the veteran goalkeeper's later years. By this point, Jennings didn't rely on lightning-fast athletic leaps, he relied on decades of accumulated muscle memory and uncanny anticipation. Lineker would make his trademark blind-side run, ghosting past a ball-watching central defender, ready to tap home a cross from close range. It was a movement that routinely embarrassed the best defenses in Europe. Yet, as Lineker raised his foot to guide the ball home, he would look up and see a towering figure already stationed in his path. Jennings hadn't run across the goal, he had anticipated the cross 3 seconds before it was even kicked, shuffling into position with quiet, economic efficiency. Lineker would try to lift it over him, slide it under him, or bend it around him. Jennings's frame seemed to expand to fill every available gap. Even at the end of his career, Jennings was still one step ahead of the sharpest minds in the game. Finally, we arrive at the ultimate predator of the penalty box, Gary Lineker. If every other attacker on this list relied on flair, power, work rate, or tactical wizardry, Lineker relied on pure, surgical spatial intelligence. He was the ultimate goal poacher. Lineker didn't care about dribbling past three men or hitting 35-yard screamers. He cared about being in the exact right place at the exact right millisecond. By the time Lineker was hitting his peak, Jennings was moving into the veteran twilight of his legendary career. You would think age would be the equalizer. You would think slowing reflexes would finally grant an elite striker the upper hand. You would be wrong. Lineker squared off against Jennings during the veteran goalkeeper's later years. By this point, Jennings didn't rely on lightning-fast athletic leaps, he relied on decades of accumulated muscle memory and uncanny anticipation. Lineker would make his trademark blind side run, ghosting past a ball-watching central defender, ready to tap home a cross from close range. It was a movement that routinely embarrassed the best defenses in Europe. Yet, as Lineker raised his foot to guide the ball home, he would look up and see a towering figure already stationed in his path. Jennings hadn't run across the goal, he had anticipated the cross 3 seconds before it was even kicked, shuffling into position with quiet, economic efficiency. Lineker would try to lift it over him, slide it under him, or bend it around him. Jennings's frame seemed to expand to fill every available gap. Even at the end of his career, Jennings was still one step ahead of the sharpest minds in the game.